Who wants to be the next Italian wine ambassador? Join an exclusive network of 400 Italian wine ambassadors across 48 countries. Vinitaly International Academy is coming to Chicago on October 19th to 21st, and to Almaty, Kazakhstan from November 16th to 18th. Don't miss out. Register now at vinitaly.com.
Welcome to Masterclass US Market with me, Juliana Colangelo. This show has been designed to demystify the US market for Italian wineries through interviews with experts in sales and distribution, social media, communications, and so much more. We will quiz each of our esteemed guests at the end of each episode to solidify the lessons that we've learned. So sharpen your pencils, get out your notebooks, and join us each week to learn more about the US market. Hello, welcome to Masterclass US Wine Market. Today, I am thrilled to welcome Jeremy Hart back to the Italian Wine Podcast for part 2 of our 3-part series on Italian wine trends and the on-premise with Jeremy and his data at Somm.ai. Welcome back to the show, Jeremy. It's great to have you here again.
Pleasure. Very nice to be back.
Absolutely. So part 1, we focus on trends in Italian red wine and the on-premise. And for part 2, a very fitting topic, we're going to be talking about island wines as we head into the thick of these summer weeks in the second half of August. We probably wish we were all sitting on the beaches of some Italian islands, but we're specifically going to be focusing today on the wines from Sardinia and Sicily. Jeremy, for starters, I was a bit surprised, I have to admit, when you proposed this topic. It wasn't what I was expecting. So tell me a little bit about why you chose this topic to focus on for the second part of our series.
Well, I've always been a huge fan of Sardinia. Like, just in general, I think it's underrepresented. I think that the wines, I'm a big Grenache guy, right? So if you're looking at Cannonau, like stylistically, it's very close to me. And then also like Vermentino is kind of king for Italian whites across Italy. It's not super translated here in the US, but the people that get behind it understand it. A little bit more personality kind of in general. And then the other big piece is that, Sicily's on fire. And so between those two things, I think that there's a pretty compelling story.
Absolutely. Sicily is definitely on fire. And then there, not to mention some super, super interesting wines coming out of Sardinia as well. So, Jeremy, our 3 key takeaways for today's episode and what we really want to focus on in our conversation is, number 1, what types of Sardinian and Sicilian wines are trending in the on-premise in the U.S. market? Number 2, where in the U.S. regionally are we seeing some of these categories really take off and on wine lists and on-premise? And finally, what do you attribute this growth to, and what do you see as some of the future potential opportunities for the wines of Sicily and Sardinia? So for starters, especially Sardinia is a bit niche. So where are you seeing these wines really take off in restaurants in the U.S.?
It's going to be the bread and butter of Cannonau and Vermentino, right? And so I think the affordability of it, I remember 8 years ago or so, I just remember seeing this like flood of Montepulciano across by the glass list, and you saw it in like new American restaurants. It wasn't just Italian, and then the piggyback on the back of that was Cannonau, a couple of years later. I think that that's still taking place. Vermentino has definitely cracked that as well. So between those two, you're seeing a lot more representation. And typically, if you see one of those two on a wine list, and maybe it's a small wine list, maybe there's 50 selections, one of those two, if they're on that wine list, are typically being poured. So there's a ton of value that is also a representation of their authenticity. They taste like where they're from. They're very unique in style, I think, and they're just crushable. Either one of them can be chilled. Variety of foods. They're nice wines, really beautiful wines.
Definitely crushable for sure, especially on those whites. So how about regionally in the U.S., like where are you seeing the most placements on wine lists of wines from Sicily and Sardinia?
As far as for cities, it's not just the coast anymore, right? And so like if you want to go in here and if you want to understand it by, number of accounts or things like that, obviously like New York is always going to be number 1, right? San Francisco's there, Brooklyn's there. The neat thing is like, Chicago is obviously in the middle, but that's like a little different. Denver is in the top 10, right?
Wow.
And so that's interesting. Portland's in the top 10, which is very interesting, right? Philadelphia, Houston, Austin, these are all very represented, very much in the middle. I think the penetration has kind of gone, everywhere as far as you can understand where these guys are very well represented. If you want to look at it by placements, I'll just give you the top 10 real quick. You got New York, LA, San Francisco, Chicago, DC. Right. After that, you got Brooklyn,
Okay.
Boston, Houston, Dallas. And so then Portland, Philadelphia, Las Vegas, Denver. But these are all places that have over 300 placements on their wine list. The ones I'm still naming now, Atlanta, San Diego, right? And so this isn't just, there's a handful here, or maybe there's 3 accounts that support them in a huge way. Maybe one of the people is from Sicily or Sardinia, right? This kind of transcends all of that, which is really great to see.
So you're seeing, the coastal cities you'd expect, but also Texas, which is interesting for these smaller regions like, Sardinia. And I don't know if Sicily can call it a small region anymore. I mean, it's certainly growing quite a bit. And looking at the data, it looks like, looking at the numbers for Sicilian and Sardinian wines, Sicily holds the top 3 spots in terms of placements on wine lists. So talk to us a little bit about what types of Sicilian wines and maybe what some of the producers that are really trending in restaurants right now in the U.S.
For Sicily, let me go right here. I'm doing this as we speak live too.
I love how easy your data is to pull up, the fact that you can do that.
All right, so for Sicily, let's go look at it by producer really quick. Another thing I was looking at prior to you asking me this question was also varietally. Right, because that's we're talking about that in the last episode. But as far as for red, Nerello Diavolo is actually number 1 for both. Right, Nerello Moscalese is number 2. If you want to look at red blends, that's number 3. Nerello red blends number 4. Cananao number 5. And then the big one that I thought was pretty interesting was Frappatos number 6.
Cool.
It's really kind of grown, and we're looking at it by red here. As far as for whites, for the most placed, and I'll jump down real quick and then I'll get into the actual appellations here in just a second. Vermentino number 1, and then one of the ones I really like seeing on here is the Caricante. And Caricante gets a good price. On an average wine list, it's one of the best priced whites. It's $80 is the average wine list price in America for Caricante.
Very cool.
Yeah. All right, let me go ahead and jump up here real quick. All right, so as far as by producer from Sicily, as far as being the most placed, you have Donna Fagata. Number 1. Yep.
Okay.
So Donna Fagata is number 1, about 800 placements across the U.S. and about 765 accounts. Planeta is number 2. They're in more accounts. They're in 845 accounts. So they'd be the most represented brand in accounts. But as far as placements, they're about 100 placements less. And so Donna Fagata, whenever they get a placement, typically people tend to lean in a little bit more and carry more than one of their wines, which is a nice little thing to know. Other producers on here, Terranera, Bonatti, Occhipinci. Oh my God.
Occhipinci. Occhipinci. Yes. Not to be confused with Opici, the important distributor. Occhipinci. Yes, of course. Those wines are wonderful.
Yeah, just kind of across the board. Some of the ones that are the most growth the last year, Bonatti is number 1 as far as the most growth. They're up 11% in the last year.
Wow. Which wine specifically from Bonatti? Is it that Rosso, or, they make white and rosé as well?
Yeah, they're up 166 placements. And so as far as the number 1 wine from those guys, let's see here, number 1 growth, it's going to be actually the Etna Rosso.
Talked about in part 1 of this series, the red wines from Italy are really seeing a lot of trends there. So that makes a lot of sense. So, let's switch over an island hop to Sardinia. What are some of the top wines and producers that you're seeing out of Sardinia restaurants in the U.S.?
Yeah, here I'm clicking in right now. And all right, so here we go. By producer, number 1, Stella Mosca is number 2, which is surprising. Paul is number 3. The number 1 is Arjolas. Is that how you say it? Forgive me.
Yeah, Arjolas.
Yeah, so they're number 1. So they have 1,000 placements, about 600 accounts. Average price point $60. That's another thing too, is just like, I think Sardinia is everything kind of goes towards a premium. You also can kind of piggyback those certain regions if the quality's there and it's very high and it's affordable, and it's unique to kind of what it does. There's not another producer in Italy that's doing a lot of Cananao, right? And so those kind of
captured a niche, right? They really stuck a flag in the ground and kind of now they bet on it and it's paying off.
There it is. And so I think that's like one of those things that will really kind of carry the island wines, right? They have the Caricante, like going once again back to the varietal, right? These things, there's not another place that's doing a lot of Nerello, right? Not a lot of Vermentino. Like Vermentino's obviously all the way through Italy. but not exported, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so I think that they're going to really benefit from that over time. What else is in here that's really kind of interesting? As far as the number one SKU in the US for Sardinia is going to be the Argalis, the Vermentino. Yeah, they have about 438 placements for that in general. And then the really neat thing is that you can also chop this stuff up. Besides just looking at it varietally, you can also look at it by type. So I know for both of these, we're basically looking at red and white, but it's nice to occasionally see if there's anything else that's kind of happening here as far as rosé or whatever else it might be. But for the
Mm-hmm.
most part, it's going to be Cananao and Vermentino.
Canada and Vermentino. Okay. Interesting. And talk to us a little bit, how much are these wines and these categories growing year over year? Like, I imagine there's been some interesting growth, which is why you called out these categories specifically for this episode. But talk to us a little more specifically about just how much these categories have grown over the last 12 months.
Yeah, so if you want to look at it, like overall, you're looking at about a 10% growth the last 2 years across the board for both, right? So like you can chop that up by appellation, look at it lots of different ways.
Yeah, that's huge. That's tremendous. And is that more coming from Sicily, I'd imagine, or how are you seeing that growth? Between.
It's more from Sicily. It's been a little bit more steady rise, over time as far as for Sardinia. But
Mhm.
I think the really interesting thing with kind of looking at this stuff is with big reds, with a lot of the other categories of Italy, you will see them grow substantially and they can scale and go wide on off premise and retail, right? With these two categories for island wines, they're still in that phase to where they're on premise. These are restaurant driven wines. I don't know how many people are going to the store to buy a lot of Vermentino or Cananao or whatever it might be, as they might call a Chianti or the more kind of established regions. So it's really nice to see this kind of growth in on premise. You know what I mean? Because besides it's just people getting behind it and pouring it, it's also people that are obviously enjoying them and other places are carrying them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, the old adage is that, you build a category, you build a brand on the on premise where someone can discover something new. They can be taught something by the sommelier. They can discover, right? They can buy a glass instead of investing in an entire bottle. So it is a really important space in which to potentially grow and introduce new categories and new producers. And sounds like, we're really seeing that come to life and seeing a really strong example of that with Sicily and all the growth, because now, especially with Sicily, we've seen that trickle down and out into the consumer and into retail as well. So what do you think has contributed to the rise in popularity of these wines from Sicily and Sardinia and on-premise? What are some of the factors that you would attribute this success and growth to?
I think a lot of it has been some of the natural wine producers, initially kind of getting behind it with Frank and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other thing that has been kind of very interesting is that it's kind of hit a wave between, White Lotus and, there's now more of a kind of a fascination there, and there's a lot of variety and it's affordable. It's a very unique experience when you can get a nice bottle of wine from an authentic place and like it very
Right.
much tastes like exactly what it's supposed to taste like. I think that that's gone a long way as far as people coming out of the pandemic.
And a lot of people, like you said, with White Lotus, maybe more travel, and they come back from a place as beautiful as Sicily or Sardinia, and they want to drink those wines. They want a little sip of their vacation to recreate those memories that they had when they were in the place. So what do you think maybe is the future for the wines of Sicily and Sardinia based on the data you're seeing from Somm.ai?
I think it's going to lean towards white in the future. I really do. I think that between
Yeah.
Caricante and Vermentino, there's going to be a really compelling story for premium whites from those two places.
Yeah.
And even premium by affordable under $100 on a wine list. As everything's
Mm-hmm.
tilted and started to rise, if you can get a really great bottle of wine for that
So
price,
value.
yeah,
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so the white wines of the region for sure. Yeah, and again, I know a lot of your data is pointing towards the popularity of red wine, as we talked about
yeah,
in part one of this series. But as you said, the value here is really tremendous for the whole category from both Sicily and Sardinia.
yeah.
Anything else, Jeremy, that you want to talk about or chat about as it relates to wines from Sicily and Sardinia and the data you're seeing from Somm.ai?
I think it would be really interesting to see more of these producers do consortium events in the U.S. You know what I mean? Like, I really do. I
Mm-hmm.
think collectively, kind of across the board, it's so many people get them in doses. You know what I mean? As if everyone can kind of see it as a whole, that's one of those things I've kind of, my former eyes of working in the import side with an importer. You know what I mean? You taste so many at one point in time, you're always comparing them against each other. It's a really eye-opening experience when you get like 3 or 4 of them open at one time, or a whole room, or whatever it might be. And so it's just, you really buy in. I think more and more over time, these are going to be more embraced and more common.
Absolutely. Great. Well, Jeremy, thank you again. That's part 2 of our series on-premise trends in Italian wine in the U.S. market with Jeremy Hart of Somm.ai. And once again, how can our listeners follow along and connect with you, Jeremy, if they're not already following you?
Yeah, find me on LinkedIn, Jeremy Hart on LinkedIn. Love to show you what we do, and I do all kinds of neat little things I find in data, and do little presentations on there often. And so, yeah, love to see you there.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jeremy. And that does it for part 2 of our 3-part series on Masterclass US Wine Market with Jeremy Hart of Somm.ai. Stay tuned for part 3.
Thank you for joining me today. Stay tuned each week for new episodes of Masterclass US Wine Market with me, Juliana Colangelo. And remember, if you enjoyed today's show, hit the like and follow buttons wherever you get your podcasts.